And then finally it was confirmed that Benítez had been sacked by the club less than 7 months after taking charge. Danny, your take on the whole Benítez era at Everton? Flawed from the start?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Simon and I have talked about it on here many times. We felt that it was just a matter of time. I mean, losing to Norwich in their predicament was always going to be the final nail in the coffin. I think there's two aspects to it, really. One is the problems Everton have had for quite a long time now, and behind the scenes, the structure and the in-house politics of the recruitment, the academy, people overruling each other, people disagreeing. You had, Marcel Brands with his right-hand man, Steinson, who was a bit like a bull in a china shop, I think. You had the young lad who the numbers guy was, Dan Purdy, who was making decisions, and people like Unsworth, who know the club and knows his stuff, was going against them. And then Rafa walks into that probably without knowing. But nevertheless, putting all that aside, whether there's problems with recruitment, whether there's problems with the academy, you have a job to do when you walk in the door, and that's to motivate the players and organise the players. And what I've seen from Everton, apart from a brief little spell at the beginning of the season where they won a few games, is a lethargy, the body language, a lethargy from the players, a lack of desire and fight, which is not something I say flippantly. That is something I've watched too often in an Everton side. Games are lost, and you might see a little bit, 30 minutes, 20 minutes to go, where they try and fight back, but that all stems from the manager. I'm not saying the players are completely devoid of responsibility. They're not, because you have your own personal pride. But it doesn't look to me like that Rafa got the players on board at all. I know they had some injuries. I'm aware of that. They lost some of their best players, but very, very few performances you could actually watch that team play and say they're at it for him.
So are you suggesting then from the start they weren't on board, or it's just over time you could see that they've stopped playing for him?
Rafa, over time, because you always give a manager a bit of time. Rafa's a pragmatist generally in the way he sets up, and Evertonian's like a bit more on the front foot football, especially at home. He's not a particularly warm, engaging character. A lot of those Everton players need different types of need managing differently than the likes of the top players you might be managing at Liverpool, Chelsea, or Real Madrid, where he's been before. And I don't think Rafa's adaptable enough to do that with those types of players. You could throw the Newcastle argument, but really, when you look back at his time at Newcastle, just avoiding relegation and boring the life out of the Newcastle fans every week was hardly a success, I don't think. But I was watching a group of players not on board with the manager, and the style they were playing wasn't great. Some of his selections were questionable, and overall, I mean, I suppose one of the obvious things to look at in regarding his management skills was the Luca Digne situation. One of your best players, because he doesn't fit exactly to your narrative, or he doesn't really want to get quite on board, or he might question you, then you're out the door. And I think a lot of fans and a lot of players within the group as well probably looked at that and thought, come on, this isn't right.
But wasn't that something like Sir Alex Ferguson would do? If someone didn't agree
it's fine when you're
eventually...
winning. It's fine when you're winning and you're getting the success. But ultimately, look, it was a bad decision. The owner, Mashiri, he's haphazard with his decisions, very short term. When he makes these decisions, there doesn't seem to be any bigger picture in his mind. He's throwing money at everything, and the whole structure of the club, you've got to start again. I mean, there's very few scouts there left now, apparently. There's no technical director in place. It's a shambles.
Well, it did feel, Simon, Marcel Brands obviously was at the club recently, then he lost his job just before Christmas. And it felt as though Rafa Benítez may well be getting more of a power shift towards him. Bear in mind, we're 17 days now into this transfer window. Does it surprise you that, okay, yes, we know that they lost to Everton and results have been poor, but bear in mind, we're in this transfer window. Rafa Benítez has suddenly been given this power, that they've made this decision, that they haven't decided to just stick with him a little bit longer. And Everton fans, majority of them will be cursing me right now for even saying that, because they haven't been happy with life there. But just the whole change in what was going on at the club, and feeling as though Benítez was going to be given more control, that they've now made this decision.
Well, they've had this mixed bag of results. When we look at the results, and of course we look at the fact that they've only won one game out of the last 12, but if you also look at the results that have gone on, they played okay against Arsenal. Arsenal were dreadful in that game, but they won the game, so it came out with what looked like a credible result. The next game was a telling point for me when they played away to Palace, and they were dreadful. and they got battered, and that showed me that there was no real response to a win that should have given them a lift. Then they played Chelsea, and they put a performance out in terms of being a galvanised spirit. Not a great deal of quality, but a real backbone to be able to eke out a result against Chelsea. And then you move on to games like the Cup game. They got beat by Brighton, who were a good side, and then what you landed at was Norwich. There's an element to me of the blind leading the blind. You know, Moshiri isn't making these decisions because he's educated in the view. He's being educated by others around and then formulating an opinion upon him. So whilst we've all piled in, and I was the poster boy for piling in Moshiri a long time ago, and now other people are getting a set of balls and saying the same thing, that the owner is indeed responsible for the thought processes. Rafa Benítez, as a decision, was flawed from the outset. You don't bring a manager in that's universally, or pretty much, universally disliked by the majority of Everton fans, that has a style of play that won't sit with them. There's not a narrative besides what Rafa Benítez once was to your neighbours that makes you think that that's an educated football decision. I do think people like Marcel Brands, people in football get reputations sometimes they don't deserve, and a lot of them are charlatans, and they get built up into situations that they're not at. You know, Ranić is not a charlatan, but he's been built up to this level at Man United that he won't be able to hit because people are saying he's the messiah of football coaching. And they sometimes get built up. So there's a whole raft of things at Everton that aren't right. From Moshiri not paying enough attention to his core business, not his core business, but the core business of football and what's going on underneath it. The appointments are, and then you look at the players and say, well, it's okay. We can look at the selection of managers that have come in and out the door, but there's a group of players there. We do have to give some credit to Norwich, because I was incredibly strong and robust about how poor they were, and they did have a go, Norwich. Yeah, they were helped. They had the ideal opposition to play against, because Everton were committing acts of self-harm all over the pitch. And you look at some of the selections that they made. I mean, the boy that played at left back, and I don't want to get too technical, but, you know, they were awful, their performances. The first goal was because a defender can't defend. They tried to almost give a second goal by passing back to the goalkeeper. All over the pitch, Gomez, a player that's good on the ball, couldn't pass the ball square, let alone forward. And you look at the whole attitude. Benítez had to go. And then you look at the timing of things, and it looks laughable about how do you sell Lucadina and then 5 days later fire the manager that you've effectively sold him for. And perhaps there's other arguments to say, well, hang on a second, maybe this idea that financial fair play and the problems that they've got, because they're the only club that seems to have been troubled by financial fair play. They couldn't buy any players because of financial fair play, yet they buy players and then immediately they sell a fullback under the narrative that he can't work with a manager. And I wonder if there are other things behind the scenes, like the need to have sold that player for 25 million quid to balance the books to be able to justify. Probably
a bit of both, because I did hear that they fell out, and
no, I don't disagree. Well, but you can fall out with people, and you can have a real will to try and fix it, or you can use it as a narrative to say, okay, we'll smoke screen it out the door. He has to go somewhere else, but we get 25 million quid.
Yeah, you're right. You don't have to get on with every single person.
No, but he's got a history of it, Rafa. You think of Alonso when he didn't play in the Champions League game because he wanted to be at the birth of his child, and that was the catalyst for Rafa to end up getting him out the door. He's got a history of it.
Well, you may well have seen the statement that Rafa Benítez put out afterwards as well, where he talked about the financial situation and the injuries that haven't helped the cause. He also went on to say it was a big challenge, both emotionally and in terms of sport. He says, my love for this city, for Merseyside and its people, made me accept this challenge, but it's only when you're inside that you realise, he says, the magnitude of the task. The question then, Everton fans, is who can take over? Hold your thoughts on that one. Who can come in then to take on the magnitude of the task? If you want to have your say on who you think should be the next Everton manager, you can give us a call, 03717 223344. We'd love to hear your views on that.
Jim White and Simon Jordan, Monday to Thursday morning, 10 till 1. On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.